So we took a china clay pit 20 years ago and we transformed it. We put a biggest greenhouse in the world in it. We put a smaller greenhouse, which is pretty big. We put the core building. We made 83,000 tonnes of soil from recycled waste. The pit was that shape when we started, so we cut the tops off, put it in the bottom to make it more suited to people than to mountain goats. We planted millions of different plants from different environments around the world, and we created this global garden so you could immerse yourself in the different environments of the world. You could meet all the crops that you use, from blue jeans to coffee beans, and to see how by interacting with the world and everything being interconnected and how you act responsibly, you can leave the world a better place. So here we are in the rainforest biome. Largest rainforest in captivity, 200 metres long, 100 metres wide, 50 metres high, and it weighs about 600 tonnes. And the air inside it weighs about 600 tonnes. So it's a very, very light structure. And it takes inspiration from bees, honeycomb, hexagons, maximum strength using minimum materials. So we built it as a big lean-to greenhouse. There's a massive wall over there which absorbs heat in the day, reflects it out at night. And each of these biome hexagons has got 3 layers of ETFE, this sort of recyclable plastic cling film with attitude, blown apart with air. Very, very insulated environment. So we've managed to recreate a rainforest in Cornwall. And if you can recreate a rainforest in Cornwall, you can regrow the Amazon. What's the rainforest biome at Eden all about? Well, it's divided up into this journey. So you come in and there's 4 different world's rainforests. So you go through 4 different parts of the world. The plants in them look similar to me, and maybe to some of you, but they are different in each area and they're just designed to live in that environment. And in each of those rainforest environments, tropical islands, West Africa, Southeast Asia and tropical South America, we tell a different story of biodiversity, we tell a different story of people who live in those areas. A piece of rainforest the size of this biome disappears every 12 seconds. So by the time I finish this piece, several of these biome worths of rainforest will have been cut down. They're storehouses of biodiversity, storehouses for future crops, provide livelihoods for people within those regions, and act as the world's fridge. They keep the world 4 degrees cooler than it would be if they weren't here. How do they do that? There's big white clouds that are above them. White reflects heat, so it gets reflected back up. They sweat, and that cools the whole area. They turn the carbon dioxide in the air into trees, and from there into dead leaves on the ground and into peat bogs under the ground. The biggest peat bog in the world in West Africa is the largest carbon store, bigger than the rainforest itself. So they all store carbon. They make weather, which makes the winds go around the world. They produce our oxygen as well a little bit, but they take most of that back in. So really they are the climate regulators and the weather makers. So welcome to the weather maker.
I'm Lindsay Brummett, I'm the Programme Director here at Eden, and I look after everything to do with our communities and everything that's away from Eden, so engaging people with Eden who may live elsewhere in the country. Eden is all about connecting people with one another and the natural world, and what I do is the kind of one another connection bit. And what that means is we work with people all over the country and indeed all over the world. A good friend of mine, Chris Hines, often says there's a trade-off for living on planet Earth, and that is that we give something back. And so that's what we work with people and communities to do. So give them ideas that they can do something where they live that makes a difference to them and to their surrounding neighbourhood. And the reason why that's important is if we can build people's community resilience and people get to know one another, we're better placed to face the challenges that are coming. So whether those are social change, political change, or environmental change, something like a pandemic, people are better placed to deal with that if they know people around them. And so that's what we spend our time doing, kind of building social capital on a mass scale across the UK. So the Big Walk was about taking people on an epic journey across our 4 nations in the UK, walking from point to point where you slow down, you take things in, and meeting with amazing community projects right across the country, and shining a light on the good stuff that they're doing. And it was a lovely project for so many reasons. Not only the journey that the walkers go on, which is really kind of, you know, it's tiring. They're walking 20, 30 miles a day for days on end. But when they turn up at these projects, there's so much joy that comes out of the projects. You know, you've got everything from people working with older people, youth projects, community energy projects, clean-ups, environmental projects, food projects, inclusion, so many things, and people respond to the things that matter to them where they live. And that's what's really heartwarming about the work that we do. We see so many ordinary people who just do stuff because they care. If we can encourage people to take stuff on and to do things that matter to them, we'll see a change in the social structure of the UK as people start to feel more positive and more hopeful about the direction of travel because they feel they're in control of it. Global situations like we're in at the moment, if you boil that down, everyone experiences it locally. Your experience of the pandemic is in your town, in your village, in your city, in your house. And so how do we work with people at that local level on some of these big, hairy issues?
It's a very crazy place to work, and I would say that there's never a day that's the same as another, and I guess that makes it all the more fun, really. My name's Rosie, and I'm a technician on the new Living Landscapes team. I work in the Mediterranean Biome, and I've worked here for 3.5 years, and prior to that I volunteered for 3.5 years, both in this biome and the rainforest. Okay, well, it's definitely not like other jobs I've ever had. I used to be an IT project manager, so I used to work in the UK and overseas, and as you can imagine, it was very different. This is fabulous. You know, you walk in on a Monday morning and there's the most wonderful scents and aromas. The birds are singing, the plants, you know, will just always astonish you. It's like no other Monday morning anywhere else. We all work on some of the areas, we share them, but the ones I focus on and absolutely love are South Africa, the citrus grove, which I'm sitting in, and then in terms of crops, I look after the succulent farm, which is our new exhibit for the winter, and in the summer, the aubergine exhibit. Most of the trees that you'll see in the citrus grove, which are lovely mature trees, have the kind of familiar fruits that you'll see in the supermarkets. The other classic which our visitors love is the citron, and it has amazing large, very large fruits which everybody think are enormous lemons, but it's actually the parent of the lemon, the modern hybrid lemon. And the citron is a really interesting plant because it actually comes in 3 different forms, and one of the forms is this amazing Buddha's hand. It's native to China. It's very special. It's very weird looking. It doesn't actually have any juice, but in these fingers is pith, which is actually not as bitter as normal citrus, so it can actually be candied. And the zest is incredibly fragrant. It's got the most gorgeous, gorgeous smell. And it has medicinal uses as well, so the peel can be dried and it's supposed to be a tonic. But the amazing thing, and the point that I love about this tree, it's actually come back to health. It was really not particularly good for quite a few years. It rarely had fruit, and they usually dropped off after a few weeks. And last year it suddenly decided to have fruit after a lot of watering and feeding and careful pruning. So I'm very proud of it, and this year it's stunning. So the other use is in China it is used as a New Year's gift, and it's also used as a Buddhist offering. It symbolises long life and happiness, and to me this little tree, absolutely bursting with fruit at the end of what has been an absolutely awful year, can give us all hope that we will have long life and happiness.
My name's Emma Smart and I'm the lead storyteller here at Eden. I have a fantastic job, for we tell stories about all the plants around the rainforest biome and the Mediterranean biome and the outside gardens. But every one of our stories we tell tells the connection of people and plants, the absolute reliance that we have on the natural world and how important it is for us to regain the balance of it. Which brings me here to the tropical islands. And this is one of my favourite stories to tell. And it is a story about the relationship between plants and people. Now, I bet you've been asked once or twice what things you would take to a deserted island. Well, this story is about what a canoe full of Polynesians took to their deserted islands. It was around 2,000 years ago in the ancient world. The South Pacific islands were inhabited by clusters of coastal communities. But for some reason, whether it was through war or a natural disaster, an island of Polynesians decided they had to leave their lands and travel north to new lands. Now, at that point, nobody had ever been north before. So it was a journey of discovery, a journey of courage. They set sail in double-hulled canoes, big enough to hold families and stores. But crucially, they took with them plants that they could survive with. Now, these weren't just plants for food, albeit they took many food plants with them, but this was also plants for construction, like bamboo, plants that made bowls like gourds, medicine plants like spices and turmeric. Now, these collectively were known as the canoe plants, and we have many of them around this rainforest biome. There were about 27, they thought. They sailed using natural navigation skills. It was truly remarkable what they did. They used the stars, the currents on the seas, the debris, migratory birds. And finally, after 2,000 miles, they found the islands of Hawaii. The Pacific Ocean is immense, so it's a bit like finding a needle in a haystack. This voyage is acknowledged today as one of the most incredible voyages that mankind has ever taken. Now, Hawaii was thought to be at that point uninhabited. So these brave, plucky Polynesians are thought to be the ancestors of the Hawaiians today, and the canoe plants all survived, and they are the staple crops of Hawaii. So I ask again, what would you take to a deserted island? It would have to be plants. We all need plants to survive, and that's why we have to take care of them. So we are in the Mediterranean biome now, and I'm standing in the grape exhibit. Now, this grape exhibit tells a marvellous story about wild versus cultivation, and it tells that by using Dionysus, god of the vine. We can see him depicted here as an untamed wild bull. Now, this was a wonderful work of art made by Tim Shaw right at the start of the Eden Project about 20 years ago, and it is one of the most photographed exhibits we have here. But let me tell you its story. Dionysus' father was Zeus, king of all gods, but his mother was a mere mortal princess, which made him half god, half man. Now, this gave him a human quality. He enjoyed being with humans. He enjoyed giving them joy and pleasure. He gained many followers from the minorities, the outcast and the poor, mainly women. Now, on his wanderings around the Mediterranean basin, he met an old man who showed him the power of the vine, how it could make wine and how wine could give joy and pleasure. So Dionysus became god of the vine, and he took his followers and the wine into the woods, and the rites of Dionysus began, a cult of drunken revelry. But like most good parties, things started to go a little bit too far. And people started to call the women, the wild women of the woods, the Maenads. The Maenads lost all reasoning. We can see them here in their crazed state. They wrecked nature, destroying everything as they went. They became greedy and considered only themselves. They carved up the landscape. But Dionysus suddenly realised that things had gone out of hand. He needed to put the balance back between human and nature so we could all live in harmony. So he took his Maenads back to the woods, and he metamorphosed them into oak trees, where they found peace. In regaining the balance between human actions and nature, Dionysus realised that nature soon recovered. Nature came back. It is all about balance.
My name is Peter Stewart. I'm the Executive Director for Outreach and Development here at Eden Project. I start from planet Earth and I go 2050, 9 billion people on the planet, about 7 now. So how do you feed them, water them, keep them happy, stop them fighting? Huge kind of challenges. And this place here at Eden is kind of built as a symbol of transformation, what people can do when they come together to do things. So everything is possible. The line of the future remains ours to make is really, really well and truly embedded in here. There's a problem in it though, there's a problem in it. We're restricted to about 1 million visitors a year. So when you're kind of then starting to think about how do I do 60 million people within the UK, 7 billion people on the planet, and start to think like that, then for me, what my job is taking the essence of the little red tag of the Eden Project, of seeing what could happen and take the essence of here, of hope and transformation, and take it to people who may actually never come to Eden. We'd love them to come, by the way, but they may never be able to do that. So how do you do that? So for the best part of over a decade, I've worked on ideas where, people can do things in terms of transformation right in their kind of own backyard without doing that. The biggest one that we've been able to work on for that period is the thing called the Big Lunch. And basically it was a very, very simple premise, a proposition. What would happen if you could simply stop the whole of the UK for about 4 hours and invite people to sit down and have lunch with the neighbours? So everything kind of stops. Don't give a reason why, but just do it. And we started back in 2009, and I think we probably had something about 300,000 people participating. When you think about 60 million, I mean, that's really, really small. So we called it like a light snackette at the time, but actually, when you research them, it moved people in a completely different way. Fast forward to where we are now, and over a decade, we've had over 6 million people participating every single year. And when you research the heck out of that, what we find that we're accredited with doing is that we are accredited with building social capital on a mass scale. What you're doing is, when you think about here, hope, transformation, you're doing that right in people's backyards in some of the most hardest to reach communities across the land. So the idea of transformation is embedded in that concept. Back in 2010, we had been going with the Big Lunch for a while, and it caught the eye of Buckingham Palace of all places. And 2012 was going to be the year of the celebrate the Diamond Jubilee for Her Majesty the Queen. And so Tim Smith got an invitation for us to go and have a chat with the private secretary up at the house, at the big house in Buckingham Palace. So myself and Tim were going to go, and we also brought a fantastic lady called Linda Quinn from the National Lottery, because they had funded us up to this point. Anyway, we get to the gates. I mean, I'm not joking. Everybody, I'm sure, looking at this Festival of Discovery, if I said to you we're going to go to Buckingham Palace tomorrow morning, we wouldn't have to have a conversation about what you were going to wear, would you? I mean, you wouldn't, you know? But so Linda and I, we didn't have a conversation. We arranged to meet in the park just before Buckingham Palace. I turned up. She was looking $1 million. I was there in a suit and a tie, and we arranged to meet Tim outside of the gate. So we come outside, and standing outside Buckingham Palace, and Tim arrives, jeans, check shirt, and I don't know if you ever watched that programme Bread and you see Freddie Boswell. I mean, his hair was absolutely extreme. It was absolutely going wild. And he had this bag with him, and Linda and I looked at it. We went up to the gate, and the policeman said, "Can I help you?" looking at myself and Linda. And Tim put his head in between us, and the policeman said, "I'm really sorry, sir, can you back off a minute? We'll be with you in a second." And I went, "No, officer, I'm really sorry, he's with us." And to which the policeman said, "I'm really, really sorry, sir, but no." And he said, "Oh, Tim, I'm really sorry. So he reached into his bag, which is about this size, and he pulled out a jacket, which you could not have had more creases in it, and he threw this jacket, put it on, basically put it on. "And is that okay?" He said, "No, officer." To which the policeman said, "I don't think so, sir, but we'll try, shall we?" To which he radioed through. Sure enough, we went up into this incredible room, private secretary, and we all had place names. Tim apologised profusely to Edward Young, the private secretary, to say that he was wearing the devil's clothing, and we sat down. An incredible meeting, in the fact that since that meeting started us on a relationship, which we were then an official partner of the Diamond Jubilee celebrations. In that year, 8.5 million people kind of took part across the UK. Not only that, we were then taking it through into the Commonwealth, and we got something like 45, 46 countries all participating. And since that time, we've been really, really honoured, because Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall, has been our royal patron, and subsequently to that, we've done things in Ghana, in Barbados, in Rwanda, and we've been an integral part of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting only 2 years ago. So the essence of this charity has gone out far and field, and although I can't control our esteemed founder in terms of his dress sense, but hey, we got over the line in what we did, so yeah.
I am Sam Kendall, and I am lucky enough to be Education Manager here at Eden, based in this amazing building, the core. Our task is to try and take those big Eden stories and messages about our dependency on nature, our connection to the natural world, the problems that we're facing and the things that we can all do about them. So giant, complex, fascinating, amazing stories, and figure out ways to make them accessible to children and young people. Last year we welcomed 53,000 school visitors here from all over the UK and all over the world, so it's kind of big numbers, but a lot of them are only here for a really short amount of time. So we have to create really compelling, engaging, delightful learning experiences that are really going to suck young people into these important stories that we want to tell. Our approach is kind of crafted through these years and these thousands of young people of experience of how you really engage and kind of grab young people by the collar so that they really want to engage with you on these topics and be excited about them. You don't do that by starting with the facts. Actually, what we do is we start with stories. Just like the rest of the Eden Project, we know that people are hardwired for stories, and if you want to bring people with you, then stories are a brilliant way to do it. We can't teach children who come here everything about sustainability. It's about equipping them to be the kind of person who can figure out those solutions and make those choices for themselves.
So I'm Dave Hunt, I'm the Chief Executive of Eden Project International, and here we are in our wonderful foundation building. So not part of the biomes, but this is where it all happens. So you've got the international team, you've got finance, you've got HR, you've got everyone up here. A few years ago, we decided that we'd had a fair amount of success here in the UK, and that actually, we're an educational charity, we're trying to connect people to the natural world. And we felt that we needed other locations around the world where we could actually allow people to have their own conversations, their own dialogue about their connections with the natural world. And so now we're working on sites in Qingdao in China, one of those small cities of 8.3 million people that actually most of us had never heard of before we started work there. Ground is broken there. We're working in Australia, down the Great Ocean Road. We're working in New Zealand in the red zone in Christchurch where the earthquake happened. And then closer to home, because you have to realise, this is Cornwall, so anything beyond the Tamar is international. We have got a site up in Morecambe, on the fabulous Morecambe Bay that we hope to open in 2024. We've also got a wonderful site in Derry, and we're working on new feasibility up in Dundee. And all of these sites are about bringing people, finding their connection with the natural world, telling stories about the natural world. So they're not copies, they try to actually work through us humans, our connection with the planet, and to remind people that we only get one planet. We're here, we're in a form of China clay pit. So I was born and bred in Cornwall. And actually, this, to be honest, was a place that you were probably going to leave when I was growing up, because there was no industry, it was dying. There was actually hope seemed to be evaporating from mid-Cornwall. And Eden's been part of a revolution, actually, not just Eden, but it's been part of a revolution that has seen actually people like yourself having careers here in Cornwall, and if you like, bringing hope back to the area. So what we like when we look for new sites is we like sites where there can be transformation, and that can be community transformation, that can be a physical site transformation like here. So around the world, in Qingdao, for example, we're working on a site that used to have prawn breeding. In Christchurch in New Zealand, it's about where the earthquake happened in the red zone. In Anglesey in Australia, it's all about a former coal mine, but it's not about the restoration of the coal mine there. It's about how does a mining company leave a legacy actually after they've gone. There are so many themes that you can play on in the natural world. So here, if you like, we're in the theatre of plants and people. But the story that we want to tell in Morecambe and also in Qingdao is about water and how we use water as humans, so the power of water, the water abundance, water scarcity and so on. So loads of different things that you can riff on, if you like. And what we hope to create is, if you like, a sisterhood, a network of sites across the world that, yes, will share some content, but will each have their unique theme and their unique place within that sisterhood.